even in a state of my lack of preparation, God, that you would still enlighten us through your word. And God, that lessons from your word here in the 6th chapter of Nehemiah, God, that it would speak to us and affect us. God, we've already heard from a number of people in here that, God, this is just a time where we could really use some encouragement. So I pray that you would use this time for that very purpose in each of our lives, God, that we would be encouraged and strengthened for the tasks that lay before us in the days to come. God, give us ears to hear and hearts to receive. And we pray all this in your name. Amen. So, what did we cover last week, guys? What happened? Nehemiah 5. Yeah, good story of greed. How did was the greed playing out? What did it look like? Like what was the specific thing that was happening? Interest rates. Yep. Aggressive lending from whom to whom, Doc? Or anybody that wants to answer. Yeah, within the people of Israel, Bob. Thank you. So we had this, this internal issue that Nehemiah had to deal with. And we talked about how while Nehemiah was dealing with this, there is no mention of a very specific thing. What wasn't mentioned throughout all of this? Nobody remembers? Bob. Yeah, Bob's getting a GIF. I did see Cass typing. Yeah, correct. Bob's right. Yeah, there's no mention of the wall in the midst of all of like the main plot of Nehemiah. While we're dealing with this internal strife, and even with all the external stuff, Israel's surrounded, all these guys threatening, like, you build this wall and we're gonna, it's gonna be terrible, and you're just gonna suffer, and you're gonna be destroyed and wiped out, and all this stuff, and we got everybody just ready to attack you at a moment's notice. That doesn't stop the Israelites, but the moment that there's internal strife, you don't hear a single thing about the wall. So Nehemiah sets to work and he's like, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. You're not going to charge interest. We're not going to be taking these pledges and causing people to go into just ridiculous amounts of debt trying to pay off, both their tribute to Persia as well as their own debts. And there's a famine and all this stuff. We're not going to do this, especially not within your own people. And so they cut that out. And we get this end of the chapter with this nice example, or multiple examples, of how Nehemiah has been himself sacrificing for the good of the people that are living in Jerusalem. And so we get a remedy to this problem. That's done. The moment that's done, we hit chapter 6, and guess what we start talking about again? Hey, look at that! Suddenly there's this thing, oh yeah, there's a wall we're supposed to be dealing with. So, with that in mind, let's get back to, the main story of Nehemiah. Let's get someone to take verses 1 through 4 here.
I can do it.
Thank you, Cass.
Now, when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono." But they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner.
Okay. So, same guys that have been causing this trouble the whole time, Sanballat, Tobiah, and all those jerks, they see that, oh look, the wall's coming along, there's no more huge gaping holes in it, and while he hasn't set the doors, there's a wall! Like a for real wall around Jerusalem. And so, I just, reading this, it's so funny, because you can almost hear, like, the panic. Just like, oh snot, we gotta do something now. And so they understand that Nehemiah has been the key catalyst that has made everything work. As long as Nehemiah is there, he drives the people. It's his leadership that is making the people, work so hard on the wall. In fact, let's not forget that it had been, decades since the people of Israel had first come back uh, to Jerusalem. It was coming up on 100 years, probably pretty soon, and the walls were still torn down. It had been over 100 years that the walls had been torn down, and even as the people had come back, they hadn't rebuilt them. They looked around, they had this evidence of ruin and destruction. They were just like, it's just the way it is. Nehemiah shows up, and it's like, nah, that's not going to be the way it is. And now they're making real progress. And Sanballat and Tobiah, they recognize, it's because Nehemiah showed up. So let's get rid of him, and we can stop this. And so they try to lure him out. And so they say, okay, hey, Nehemiah, why don't you come down and visit us in this open plain down over here, and let's meet and have a chat. Okay. But pay close attention to what's written next. Nehemiah writes, but they intended to do me harm. How did Nehemiah know that? Oh, no. Jess takes the opportunity to make a pun. For those interested, the plain of Ono it's right around 20 miles north of Jerusalem. So they were calling Nehemiah to come a little ways away from Jerusalem to meet. But it wasn't a completely unreasonable request, because remember, Sanballat and Tobiah, they were hanging out in Samaria, which is north of Jerusalem. So what they were kind of doing is like, hey, why don't you come to some neutral ground? So how did Nehemiah know that they intended to do him harm? Okay, Wise Rat says is basically just a gut feeling. Eli, they've been at tension with them building the wall. Yeah, that's true. So many people typing that Discord's just like, forget it. I'm not listing them all. Just several people are writing. Either God told them, or you figure that the only logical reason they want to meet him now. You guys are picking up on it. Eli's right. Yeah, there's, what good has come out of anything from them? They've done nothing but threaten and mock and taunt. What the heck do they want to talk about now that we're so close to completing the wall? Yeah, Kess is on point too. They're insisting that he come out from where he's at, that they want to meet him in an open area. Jerusalem hasn't posed any threat to them, but they have definitely posed a threat to Jerusalem. So there's that. But Bob's also right. That his God probably gave him some divine insight. The idea here is that Nehemiah was perceptive. He took a look, analyzed the evidence, and was like, I think something's up. I don't think I should be trusting these guys for this. And we've talked about how Nehemiah is so much a book that is, a book about leadership. Nehemiah displaying all these great qualities in a leader. Perception is a big one. Being able to understand what you see, understand what's happening around you, and react to it. React with wisdom. That's actually an excellent point, Kess. Yeah, Nehemiah, what was his job back in Susa? What did he do? Yeah, literally. He's the king's cupbearer. He's testing for poison. This is a guy whose personal job, he's basically a bodyguard. So now that he's here, he's like, I wonder if someone's out for something. I bet I can see some signs. So yeah, good job picking up on that. And so he says, nah, why would I leave? Why? It's like, why would I come down? We're doing a great thing here. We're nearly done. I have no reason to come talk to you. You've given me no good reason to even carry on a civil conversation with you, or believe that it's possible to carry on a civil conversation with you. But Sanballat, you know what? He was persistent. He sent him a letter, or he sent that notice to him 4 times. 4 times. Give him that. What's more is that Nehemiah was even more persistent, because he said the same thing each and every time Sanballat sent to him. Hey, Core, your mic is hot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. Nehemiah stood his ground. They wouldn't take no for an answer, but that was the only answer Nehemiah had to give. All right. Any thoughts, questions in regard to that? All right, so far so good. All right. How about the next 3 verses?
I can read it.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
In the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand, and it was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem also says it, "that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall, and according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. And now the king will hear of these reports, so now come, and let us take counsel together."
Thank you. All right, now things get interesting. So Sanballat's tried this thing 4 times. He's like, Nehemiah, why don't you come down here and meet? Nehemiah's like, nah, I got things to do here, bruh. So this time he sends a servant of his with an open letter that would have been read out within the city, so that everybody could hear. And he says, listen, there are these reports among all these nations in the surrounding areas that you intend to set yourself up as king here in Judah and to rebel against Persia. And you've even got these prophets that are going to be, basically proclaiming you and saying, behold the king of Judah. So what's Sanballat's plan this time? Yeah, it's like this weird mix of blackmailing and racketeering. He's basically saying, look, there are these reports out, it would be just, you wouldn't want the king to hear about that. How about we come out and we talk about this, and then the king doesn't have to hear about it, and you can just be left alone. We can be done, but let's just work this out, you and me. Yeah, subtle. But I don't know how much faith I'd be willing to place in that, since that's literally coming from Sanballat. We know, the big thing that kind of works against that here is, what is Sanballat doing? Is any of this true? Nope, it's not. Just think about how this is. I mean, while yes, it's blackmailing, it's falsified blackmailing because none of it's true. So there's really nothing to blackmail. And think about how insulting this would be to Nehemiah. Nehemiah's job back in Persia was literally as a bodyguard to the king. He was literally one of the king's most trusted advisors and protectors. And now Sanballat's over here saying, you look to rebel against the king. How would you feel? Think about that. Taking shots at your trustworthiness when you were literally the man who laid his life on the line every time that the king ate a meal. Oh man, I'd be hot under the collar. I would be like, okay, let's go down and meet this guy. I'm gonna teach him a thing or two. So Sanballat is like Bob said, he is not willing to take no for an answer. So he's basically threatening Nehemiah with lies to get back to send to the king. Whether he intended to or not is beside the point. He wanted to force Nehemiah's hand by making things up and saying, hey, this gets back to the king. Who knows what kind of trouble you might have. Any questions with that? Can't tell if Bob's typing or if he's just posting up another GIF. So in the meantime, we'll just get someone else to read the next 2 verses to see Nehemiah's response. All right, thank you, Eli.
Then I sent to him, saying, no such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands.
Thank you. So what does Nehemiah say? What's his response? Correct, Bob. There are a number of ways I could put this. I could say, dog, you full of it, or something like full of more hot air than a politician. But yeah, Bob beat me to the punch pretty good. He's like, you're making stuff up. This is ridiculous. I can almost, the way in which Nehemiah responds, it's almost, I can almost hear him laughing at this servant who's reading this aloud. He's probably just there like, dude, how stupid do you think we are? Oh, man. Just, I'm like, get out of here. I was like, every like lie detector test in the city's going off. And Nehemiah knew it was up. He's like, look, they want us to be scared. They want us to fear. But you know what the problem with this whole thing was? Nehemiah had a letter from the king that told him to do this. What on earth did these guys think was going to happen? When Nehemiah came back, he showed the letter. Like, he has all this information. What were they expecting? He told them, I'm coming back to do some work in Jerusalem. And, like, I've got the king's support. And they're just like, oh, this gets back to the king, you know? Stuff is just like, what did you say? This is absurd. Oh my gosh. And then, as Nehemiah is so prone to do, and that again, this is kind of what makes a lot of scholars believe this was a diary, he just writes this quick little just drop prayer. Whether or not they knew that the king had granted it and had told him to do it, they knew that Nehemiah had come from the king. And they knew that he had some business, that he had some task to be doing there. After he started on the wall, it was probably a fair guess that that was it. But we know that, you know, from Nehemiah chapter 2? Yeah, Nehemiah chapter 2, that he kept the plans and his real purpose a secret up until he told the leaders in Jerusalem. Yeah. They should have been able to put 2 and 2 together, basically. So Nehemiah just drops in this prayer. He says they sought to scare us so that we would drop the work, but instead he asked God to strengthen his hands. He's like, God, I know your purpose. I see that you have a mission for me here. We are fulfilling your purposes. Keep our hands strong. Don't let us be dissuaded by anything. We know we're doing your work, and we don't want anything to distract us from that. It was like what was mentioned that last week, staying on mission. It's just that was written foresight, because that's exactly what Nehemiah is saying here. All right. About the next 5 verses. You guys gonna make me take this one? You see names in there and you get scared? All right, I'll take this one. Nope, mine. I already called it. Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Deliah, the son of Mehita. Oof. In my Bible, they've split that between lines. It's hyphenated, so now I have to do this. What have I set myself up for? Mehetabel, who was confined to his home, he said, "Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night." But I said, "Should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in." And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, so that they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah, and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So Tobias and Sanballat are still not done. What's next? They're like, okay, we sent messages to him 4 times and he gave us the same response each time. Then we sent an open letter and he basically laughed in our faces. What happens next? Yeah, first they tried to kill him basically in the first few steps. It's like, why don't you come out in the open where we can talk with like knives and stuff. But that doesn't work. So like, okay, maybe we can undermine him in a different way. Yeah. So sacrilege is what they're trying to do. What's the problem with what's being said? Because Kes says they're trying to stampede him into sacrilege. Oh, yeah, Eli's got it there. Trying to get Nehemiah into the Holy of Holies. Why is that a problem? Eli says it's out of character because you die. There you go. Wise Rat's on it. Yeah. So there are a few things happening here. So for one, if he goes into the temple, yeah, he'll more than likely God would strike him dead. Again, this is another thing that leads people to believe that he was of the line of Judah because of his strict refusal to go into the temple. A Levite could go into the temple as long as he was ordained, which is or designated for the purpose, which is not ever claimed by Nehemiah. But that's just some another thing that people use to say, he probably wasn't of the line of Levi. But even if God didn't strike him dead, then he would go into the temple, and Sanballat and Tobiah and all those guys knew that only the Levites and priests could go into the temple. And if he's going in there, he technically is defiling the religious rule that he was set to not reinstate, but to oversee. It gave them an avenue to discredit him. And if you could discredit him, then you could have him removed. And if you could have him removed, you could stop the work. And so you have this guy, Shemaiah, who says, look, these guys are coming to kill you at night. So the only safe place where I can think where they won't follow you is into the temple. Why don't we go there, hang there, and these guys won't chase you in there. Nehemiah gets a 2-pronged response. First, he says, should such a man as I run away? What's he say there? What's the implication with that response? God will get him. Okay. He's admitting he isn't worthy. Trying to call out their intentions. He's not afraid to die fulfilling his life's purpose, which was what, Kess? Specifically, what role in rebuilding the wall? I'm trying to get you guys to a certain point. What's the main theme of the book? Oh my goodness. Yes, thank you, Wise Red. Leadership. Yes. Nehemiah is a man of leadership. He provides an example, and he has been the guy that has been at the forefront of this work. And so if the people of Israel know that Nehemiah ran away, do you think that would have some effect? They hadn't done anything up until he showed up. And if they see him running, do you think that would cause them to reconsider and lose their confidence in the work? Yeah, Kess, no one wants a chicken governor. No one wants your governor to be scared or to show weakness like that. You know, if the guy who's in charge isn't confident, then why would you follow him? So that's Nehemiah's first response. He's like, look, I am the leader of these people. I can't go running from everything that's dangerous. Then he says, and what man such as I, literally the same designation he gave himself in the previous question. He said, such a man as I. And he says, what man such as I could go into the temple and live? And you guys covered that. You know, he's like, I'm not a priest. I can't go in there. That's not my role. And again, here's that perception. He understood and saw that God had not sent Shemaiah as a prophet, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Ooh. Making claims for money. And look, this guy has a house in Jerusalem. How tough would it have been to be Nehemiah? You were having to look out for danger from without, so you've got all of your builders armed with swords, and you're placing guards around the wall to call out for danger if any should approach. But you also have guys within your own city who are working to undermine you, that value the money of the enemy more than the safety of your own people. And then he just says it outright. For this purpose, Shemaiah was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin so that they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Then Nehemiah, once again, right back to those little drop prayers. He says, God remembers Tobiah and Sanballat according to these things that they did. And also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. Who is Noadiah? I'm really hoping somebody writes something specific. Hey, Doc, good man. I was hoping someone would pick up on it. Yeah. Noadiah? No idea. Oh, that was a good one. Yeah. Sorry, I've been waiting on that one. This is something that I assume one of those other commentaries would have covered, but none of my other, like my study Bibles and none of the notes or anything say anything about her. I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't know who she is. All that I know about her is that apparently she was a prophetess and she was working with Tobiah and Sanballat to try and discourage Nehemiah and the work on the wall. I don't know any more than that. But we know that's enough. Nehemiah knew who she was, and he recognized her for what she was. More than likely, because she's mentioned by name, she was probably at the forefront. She was probably one of the more prominent ones that was doing it. But yeah, aside from that, I couldn't tell you. Thank you, Eli, for getting on that. Mentioned this one time, and not in a good way. Probably tells you enough about her and her character. All right, awesome. So they're trying to get rid of Nehemiah, trying to just shake his confidence, shake his resolve in any way possible, and they just can't do it. So Nehemiah stays in the role of leadership, stays true to his purpose, and what happens? This happens. Can someone take those two verses? Nobody? Thank you, Kess.
So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God.
Okay, let's talk about this. Oh, you're jumping the gun a little bit there, Eli. Let's talk about this here. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul. Now Elul approximates right around to the month of August, from what I read. But that's not really important. Great, August. Kind of hot. Working out in the sun. Great. How many days did it take? 52. That is literally less than 2 months to fully reconstruct a ruined wall, a wall that, like, to clear away all the ruins from the wall and then reconstruct the thing from the ground up by hand, stone wall. This is over 400 years before Jesus comes along. It took him 52 days. This is like half of summer. That is astonishing. With all of the opposition that they faced, they still got that done. And then the response of the surrounding nations is absolutely merited. It says they were like afraid. They were like, oh my gosh, how in the world? It says they fell greatly in their own esteem. Ooh, does that sound familiar at all? Nehemiah prays in the first part of chapter 4 in regards to Tobiah and Sanballat. He says, "Hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads." Nehemiah prays, just a few verses earlier in this chapter, he says, "God, strengthen my hands." And how does it say that the nations perceived that the work had been done? It had been accomplished with the help of our God. Nehemiah's prayers were answered in a mighty way. 52 days to build a wall. Let's go back. Let's go back to the first 2 chapters of Nehemiah. When Nehemiah was in the king's court, and he received word from Judah that the walls were destroyed and the people were in great distress and all that stuff. What did Nehemiah do? Do you remember what his response was? I mean, yeah, he got sad and he wept, but what else did he do? For how long, Farmer Gal? For 4 months. 4 months passed. 4 months of prayers and fasting and seeking God's face passed between when Nehemiah heard about the problems in Judah and when he presented his plan to the king. It was over twice as long that he prayed that it took the work to be finished. And Nehemiah, just because he spent 4 months in prayer, didn't stop once he started on his way back to Judah. There's one thing that we can really take from Nehemiah here, is that he recognized the importance of having God involved. Oh, strangely appropriate here. Measure twice, build once. Pray twice as long. Now, I don't think Nehemiah knew how long it was going to take to build the wall. If I were him, I would have probably expected that, it would probably take a lot longer than a month and a half to finish building an entire wall around the city. But he bathed this thing. He absolutely drenched all of this in prayer, and he continued to pray when he got back. He knew that God was going to have to be important, and God showed up in a mighty way that even the nations around that were so determined to stop them recognized that this had to have been done with the help of their God. There's no way it's done any other way. Now, I know we're not through chapter 6, but the last few verses kind of tie in a little bit better with chapter 7, so I'm going to cut that there. What can we take from this tonight? I mean, we've already got some good stuff there at the end. Pray twice, build once. I think that might be a bad. I understand what we're saying, but I don't want to go with that because then it sounds like if you pray twice about it, then you're good. No, Nehemiah prayed a lot. I can't read the first part of that, Eli, without hearing it in James Earl Jones's voice. Certain of you will get that. This ties in very much to last week. I would say one of the big things is stay on mission. Be on God's mission. Know where He wants you and go in that direction. I remember being at Bible college, and we have a missions conference at Bible college, and it coincided to my own church's missions conference. And my pastor, the founding pastor of my church, has tremendous reputation with the college I was at, and so he was one of the keynote speakers. And so he was given a I guess a message. You don't want to call it a sermon, but a message at our missions conference, and all the students from our church are sitting together and we're watching. And he's talking, and he made a statement. He got off on the idea of Jesus, and Jesus's, how steadfast and how determined he was on this earth, that he had a purpose and he had a plan and he had things that he came to do. He made a statement that I think that is stuck with me, and I hope that I never forget it, and I hope that I continue to grow into this. When you're talking about Christ, he said, Christ looked at the cross and he said, if that is my field, then I will go there and I will die there. Jesus was not dissuaded, knowing the suffering that would come with his mission. Nehemiah would not be dissuaded in spite of the threats of mockery, threats of violence, threats of death, threats of ruined reputation. He would not be dissuaded because he knew what his mission was. He knew where God wanted him to be. He knew where he was supposed to be, in the center of God's will, and said, why would I move? And I think that's something that we all can utilize today. If we're in the center of God's will, rest assured, we live in a world that's all too often not going to like that. We don't have to go far to see that. But if we're there, why would we ever move? Doing what God wants me to do? Sweet. Guess I'll stay here. Now, it doesn't mean that God might not change where he wants you. God might not want to move you to a different location. He often does that. If God never moved, didn't want you to change what you were doing in life, we'd all still be in school. Missionaries would never leave the mission field. Some of us missionaries would never get to the mission field. And I know that no matter what we're doing, which always to be as work done unto the Lord. And look what God did when a man set his priorities in order, pursued God for 4 months. He went and led his people, and we literally have a miracle that was so undeniable that nations that were literally the enemies of the people of God said, only God could have done that. What a testimony. These guys sought to ruin Nehemiah's reputation, and in the end, all they were doing was just glorifying God. Not in the way that they wanted to, but they made it clear that that had to be what it was. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's really cool. Oh, you're quoting Colossians 3. One of my favorite chapters in the Bible. It's a good one. That is a hard verse, though. I'll tell you, I had a hard time with that one today. Especially that last bit. But I'll tell you guys about that after the study if you want. What do you guys think? What would you like to add or input, if anything? Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Eli. I know it just to those that from the outside looking in, maybe like pray twice. That's it. Just 2 times? No, but I absolutely we understand what we mean. There should be plenty of prayer and seeking God before we enter into anything. Prayer is what was the way I put it? Reading scripture is inhaling, prayer is exhaling. Cass, don't. That's a cop out. Tell me you know where that is. Please, please tell me. Okay, I'll let you have this one. It's in 1 Thessalonians 5:17. I just see pray without ceasing. Reference somewhere. I'm like, okay. Fun times. I wasn't gonna throw that at you, Bob. You were fine. I trusted you. Though I am curious why Eli posted up on Matthew 3:25. Was that just a guess, or no? You dirty rat! Changing it from Matthew 3:25 to 1 Thessalonians. What? I just wanted to let you know, Matthew 3 doesn't have 25 verses, so that's why I was curious. Oh man. Sorry, we're starting to get off the rails. Any other thoughts, guys?